At this crucial moment, a very lonely figure walked slowly across the top of the Capitol building steps right up to the three assassins. A gasp went up from the throat of every individual in that mob, for every one of them recognized the figure of Mark Antony, second most important general in the Roman Empire, right-hand man of the dead Caesar, lifelong friend and boyhood chum of the fallen leader. And every one of them wondered at the raw courage of a man who would walk right into a lion's den, as this man obviously was doing. Very nonchalantly, Mark Antony walked right up to the three murderers and said, "Well, this seems to be a kind of a funeral ceremony going on. I see Caesar's dead. Inasmuch as Caesar was unquestionably a very important man, this is undoubtedly going to be a red-letter day in the history of our period. Because it's so important an occasion, I wonder if I may have your permission to talk a little to this audience." "Nothing doing," said Cassius and Casca, and they drew their knives again quickly from beneath their tunics and prepared to stab him on the spot. "Wait a minute," said Brutus. He was kind of feeling his oats. He had just made this great speech and won the audience over to his side. "Wait a minute," he said. "Let me introduce him. I think I can present Mark Antony to this audience in such a way it'll actually help our cause, not hurt it." "Why gamble?" said Cassius and Casca. "We've got it made. Kill him now." And they raised their knives to stab Mark Antony on the spot, but Brutus would hear nothing of it. He said, "Wait, I tell you, wait. I can handle this better." Over their protests, he walked right out front and center again, and he said, "Now, good people of Rome, in order to convince you once and for all that Cassius, Casca, and I have nothing to conceal in the business of this day, we are actually going to introduce to you at this time Mark Antony himself. We do it in the supreme confidence that nothing Mark Antony can say can refute the truth that we have already told you about this evil man, Caesar. I present to you Mark Antony." Introduced, Mark Antony walked out front and center and looked down into the eyes of the people in the mob, and his blood turned to water. He hadn't realized till this split second how far this business had gone, but he saw the bloodlust in their eyes. He knew the blood was pounding through their hearts and through their veins and arteries, and he knew that the first false syllable he uttered, he was a dead duck. The perspiration broke out on the palms of his hands and on his forehead, and in panic, he hunted for some word with which to start his talk. After an eternity, it seemed to him, he finally caught one, and he said, "Friends." No one threw a rock. It's awfully hard to stone a man who has just said, "Friend," to you. After a long pause, he finally caught a second word, and he said, "Romans." This was a lucky choice. Romans? These people, most of them belonged to the plebeian class in Rome. Most of them were called dogs and were spat upon by the nobility riding along in their chariots. To be called Romans had a noble ring to it. 3 or 4 men in the front row of the mob took their brickbats and put them behind their buttocks, thinking, we'll wait a minute and then kill him. He caught another word, and he said, "Countrymen." This was a lucky piece of flattery. Countrymen of Mark Antony, the second greatest fighter that Rome had ever produced. A few more put their weapons behind their backs, thinking, we'll let him speak a sentence or two and then kill him. He got underway, and without a shade of satire or irony in his voice, he said, "The noble Brutus has told you that Caesar was ambitious and deserved to die. There is no denying the truth of the charge that Caesar was ambitious. I have never known an individual in my whole lifetime as ambitious as this man Caesar. Why, I have been on military campaigns with that fellow when he would pace the floor of his tent all night long, trying to think of some stratagem with which to outwit the foe on the field of battle the next morning. Oh, there was a driving, surging, demanding ambition inside Caesar, never paralleled, I'm sure, by any person in our period of time. The second indictment the noble Brutus made against Caesar was that he was raising our taxes all the time. There's no gainsaying the truth of it. I would be silly to deny it. Our taxes have gone up year after year until we stagger beneath their burden. True, whenever he conquered a foreign state, he has made that power pay tribute into our treasury, but it hasn't done you and me any good. Our taxes have continued to climb. The third indictment that Brutus made against Caesar was this, and again he reiterated the gist of it and agreed to it. And he did so with the fourth and the fifth. In essence, what he did was to repeat Brutus's speech and say it's all pretty well founded. Then he did a curious thing. He said, as a matter of fact, there was one other thing wrong with Julius Caesar that not even Brutus apparently knew about. At least he didn't tell you about it. I don't think I'd know it myself were it not for the fact that Caesar's wife Calpurnia and my wife Porphyra are pretty good friends, and women talk over the backyard fence as women do. And I can tell you this about Caesar, and he raised a 6th indictment against his dead friend Julius Caesar. And now in the minds of all the people in that audience were passing thoughts like these. What a chicken. We thought this Antony was going to come out here and stand up for his murdered friend. Instead of that, he's obviously trying to get in on the bandwagon, trying to change sides. He's got a yellow streak down his back a yard wide. Apparently, this evaluation was correct, for now Mark Antony was saying, I want to thank you people for hearing me out this day. You've been a wonderful audience and very generous to let me speak upon this very important occasion in history. There's just one thing that keeps running through my brain. I don't suppose I should bring it to your attention. It's a question to which I cannot see the answer. Well, perhaps I should ask the question, for perhaps you can answer it and clear it up for me. The thing I can't understand is what happened 3 weeks ago when we were celebrating the Feast of Lupercal. You all remember that that is one of the great holidays here in the Roman Empire. You, Trebonius, were there that day, I remember, in the audience when we came to the height of our celebration. And Debius, you were there too. 3 blocks down Main Street, we had built a great wooden platform to serve as the headquarters for our celebration. On that platform that day sat every dignitary in Rome. All your highly elected officers were there. 3 times that day, to the forepart of that platform came Marcus Marellus, your highest elected tribune in Rome, and in his arms he carried a silver tray, in the middle of which rested a king's crown, made of gold and embedded with precious jewels. 3 times that day, Marellus begged of Julius Caesar on the platform behind him to put on that king's crown and to become king of the world. And 3 times Caesar rejected it. Now, if Caesar really wanted to become world king, why didn't he take the crown when... Well, forget it. I don't want to stir up your minds or your passions. It would not be meet that I should do so. There's just one other thing that keeps circling around in my feeble brain. I can't think of the answer to the second question. Perhaps you can clarify it for me. I cannot understand what happened last winter. Do you remember that one night during the coldest season of our year, before daybreak, we heard a fanfare of trumpetry up at the head of Main Street? Many of us climbed from our warm beds up to our rooftops, some to the very chimney tops, to see the great procession coming down the main street of Rome. Behind the trumpeters came the golden-plated chariot of Julius Caesar, with Caesar standing proudly erect in his vehicle, and in chains. Behind his chariot wheels stumbled 100 captive Spartan generals. Caesar had just stamped out the last show of resistance to Roman might and authority in Sparta, had captured their 100 greatest leaders, and brought them captive back to Rome. And as that procession made its way past our homes, many of us wondered, what will he do with those 100 generals? Will he put them to death? If he wants to put them to the sword, there's none who can say no to Caesar. His word is absolute law in this realm. Wonder if he'll sell them back to Sparta, and what he'll do with the ransom money if he collects some for their safe return to their native land. We watched him as the weeks passed, and sure enough, Caesar did sell those men back to Sparta, and for their safe return received 100,000 drachmas of ransom money. And again we wondered, what's he going to do with all that cash? Will he put it in his own private estate? If he wants that money, there's none who can say no to Caesar. His word is absolute law in this place. I see from your faces, some of you know now what he did. You recall, well, what he did with that money. He built that new bridge across the Tiber River. Many of us walked across it this very morning on the way to our jobs. If Caesar really was the greedy rat Brutus has depicted him, Why in thunder didn't he take that cash when he had it in hand? Ah, forget it. I don't want to inflame your minds or your heart.